Welcome to the Startup Competitors Podcast, where we talk with early-stage entrepreneurs to understand what information they use to inform product roadmap, strategy, and market differentiation.
Welcome to the Startup Competitors Podcast. Today we have Paroon Chadha, who's the co-founder and CEO of Passageways. Paroon, welcome, man.
Thank you. Pleased to be here.
It's been a long time since we chatted. I really appreciate taking the time to do this. Why don't we start with an overview of Passageways and what you and your team do?
Absolutely. So we are a company based out of Lafayette, Indiana. That's where we started. We also have offices in Indianapolis and London, UK. About 100 people serving nearly 1,500 customers at this point. And we are in the enterprise collaboration space. Secure enterprise collaboration space, to be more precise. So really, there are two product lines we have. One is for the employee collaboration. So across the organization, it's just a collaboration software that allows employees to engage with each other, stay on message, stay on, plan, and so on. And that's called OnSemble. And the second product is a board collaboration software for board meetings, paperless board meetings, and the entire workflow that goes into pulling together, a seamless experience for your board members and executive committees. And that one is called OnBoard. So two products, essentially at this point, both are growing product lines. And, uniquely, we are one company and probably the only company that allows you to look at your entire enterprise collaboration, from the tip of the pyramid all the way to the last employee you may have. We like to say from boardroom to the break rooms, collaboration software is really where we live.
Very cool. So before we turn on the mics, you had mentioned, maybe this is a good spot to have this discussion. You had mentioned that you're a 5 vertical company. Can you unpack that for me a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So we grew up in the credit union industry, which is interesting because, me and my co-founder, Chris, our seed investment came from Purdue Federal Credit Union. This is right after school. That's, all we knew, and that's where we went. And we started to really work with credit unions. And we got really good at it. In fact, quickly became one of the fast-growing companies in the space, as well as ended up on the Inc. 500 list of fast-growing companies in the entire country. And then we looked at some adjacent markets, and community banks was the obvious next place to go. We started to find success there as well. And from there, we needed to expand to other markets. The products apply pretty broadly. So we started to go into community hospitals. And you start to get the idea, when you go into a small town like Lafayette, Indiana, there's always a community hospital, a community bank, a few credit unions. And we found that niche and we really kind of just started to get good at it. And then thereafter, we've become very good at university space as well. And increasingly, we are starting to show up in the nonprofit space as well. As an organization, we have products that apply very broadly. These are horizontal products. But really, it's tough to really kind of make your mark or really sort of become the solution that comes to mind if you're trying to service the entire market. And Passageways, up until last fall, was a bootstrapped company. And that plays into, your strategy at a very deep level. So without wanting to raise, tens of millions of dollars, we wanted to make sure that we are very good at servicing, the customer. And really, it came down to making some good relationships, finding some good use cases, being able to talk to, their pain points. And that's where we started to go from 1 to 2. And at this point, our strategy is around being very good at, these 5 verticals. And, it's reflected in the way the product is being developed. It's reflected in the way we recruit our employees. It's reflected in the way we partner with other companies. And it's interesting that we've drawn a line at this, 5 number for the moment, at least, simply because we feel like, there's a lot of cross-pollination of ideas within these, 5 verticals, yet there is a need for each one of these to be dealt with differently. In the long run, I can see ourselves having a GM over each one of these verticals. So we're not a horizontal playbook when it comes to sales and marketing. But outside of sales, marketing, and the customer success function, we are a horizontal company. The tech support and the product development has actually been done pretty much as one product line, if you will.
That's what I was just going to ask as I think through that. So, yeah, how much customization is there by vertical in the product itself, or is it really just how you position it from a sales and marketing perspective in each of those verticals?
That's a good question. I think, if it was just a sales, it's just sold vertically and it's a horizontal product, you get very little out of it. You do have some value to that. But I think we've gone at least a couple steps deeper, where we have partnered with organizations that are actually very integral and very important in that space. I'll give you an example. We partnered with an organization called AGB. AGB is Association of Governing Boards, and they are a powerful membership organization out of DC. They work with university presidents and their trustees. And, we've actually kind of just built a product offering, and we even co-branded, we call it AGB OnBoard. With the result that we get a lot of input on product functionality. We also get a lot of content that needs to be actually shared with that particular audience. When you think about a university, you have to think about how they are very different compared to the local bank. The local bank is more worried about the quarter and the year, right, and the next recession. Universities don't think about that. Their planning horizons are 10, sometimes even longer, 10, 15 years. The trustees are there for a very long time. The tenureship of the board is actually really at a different level. The committees are very different. And to be able to service them, just as a tech company, would require you to gain a lot of small anecdotal, pieces of information that can actually make you good. But when you have a partnership going, then you can really kind of just plow through, not having to be a subject matter expert, just being a company that makes beautiful software that works well, but it's actually then fitted for that audience through this partnership. I think that's where we found was the right cut to make as an organization.
Got it.
And same thing in other verticals, of course. We repeated that again and again.
Yeah. When did you start Passageways? What year was that?
So 2003, January.
2003. So you bootstrapped for 15 years,
yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
What led you to decide to raise money?
So, I think raising money is kind of a tricky decision. How much, what time. We clearly started with some seed capital. So we knew the benefits of actually raising money. We got a lot of calls when we were on the Inc. 500 list and 5,000 list of people actually wanting to put in money. I think in our journey, we were profitable right from year one. And that's a key difference. And we were profitable to the point where we could actually go very fast in diversifying into different products or going into different, geos. All of that was always being tried. But we really kind of just, never saw a real repeatable, growth engine. Once I started to feel like this is very repeatable, like there's not a single day at Passageways when we don't add a new client. Sometimes we add, 5, 7, 10 customers in a single day. I remember last December, there was a day when we added 27 customers.
That's awesome.
And, when you get to that repeatability, that's when it's time to actually kind of now, multi-thread this and really make sure that you are able to increase your, impact. So we took capital last fall. And, really from that standpoint, this came at a point, where we knew the sales and the marketing was, very finely instrumented. We needed to add capital to really kind of increase the impact. That's what actually led to the raise that happened last year.
Got it. So then talk a little bit about that change. 15 years as a bootstrap company to now, where I'm also assuming you probably didn't have anybody from the outside asking you about returns and status and things like that, to now I'm sure investors have needs and wants in terms of where you're going and updates and stuff like that. I'd love, just from your perspective, contrasting, life before to life after, what's different and maybe some of what's better, what's worse.
Absolutely. So I think, first of all, bootstrapped world and, a funded sort of, a real round being raised, this is chalk and cheese. This world is really very different for me. And I've probably been a better student of this just because things have happened rather slowly and you really kind of get to understand the difference. In the bootstrapped world, the operating cadence was actually driven by efficiency. because you were the only one responsible. I had a set of advisors that I've kept along for several years, just to really kind of just make sure I'm, putting my feet to fire and really kind of just solve some of the tricky challenges that show up in a timely manner. But there were not as many, expected returns, every month, every quarter, and so on. When we raised money, now we have a formal governing board. That board actually really has an operating plan. We need to make sure that we are not, tripping any governance in our agreements, and raising any alarm bells for no reason at all. And I think it really changes the way you operate as well. So the operating cadence is going from being efficiency driven to growth driven. There's a lot of appetite at the board level to try and either fail or succeed, as long as you're very clear about why you are doing things in a certain manner. So this board has been very supportive, in just making sure that we are maximizing our growth potential. They're also very supportive in doing things that we would not be able to do on our own or in the past. So I get a lot of key input in terms of strategies and sometimes even tactical support. And a good example would be, we started down the path of building a UK office. I had one single employee for a year and a half. After the growth funding, we've increased that to a 10 people team at this point. And we have, we know that by the end of the year, we'll have at least 100 customers in UK. A lot of that is a result of, finding out exactly what it'll take to really kind of build a scalable team there. We've had to, go together there a few times, just make sure that we understand that market. I got some air cover from my investors in terms of, researching the competitive landscape there, where they have analysts who could study that for me. I just don't have the cycles in the day to worry about a market that I'm not even actually really serious about yet. So that's been a big difference. The other big difference here is that you get a little more strategic about working on the business rather than working in the business. So my role has changed considerably. I have to think about the board meeting cadence and really making sure that we report back on everything that we actually discussed. Like most boards, you get what you invest into it. So to be able to discuss some key questions and bring out where the blockages may be or where the key opportunities are, that's been a big difference. To be honest, it was the wild, wild west when I was just, running it with some advisors. I could ignore the advice. Now there's a little more rigor. I could still actually really go back as the operator and say, my discretion says this is not worth pursuing, or this is something that we should accelerate. And the board supports it. We've met our numbers for every quarter so far, so I don't know if they would be different if that was not the case. But I certainly get the sense that I have an inner, sanctum to the organization where I can discuss some real key issues, sometimes some very tricky issues. This could be your own blind spots or your own weaknesses, and really work towards making this an organization that scales, regardless of how I would want to do certain something. And then that's the biggest difference that I see. Being able to really take a strategic look at the business itself. Investors want returns. The day you raise money, you've already sold the company, at least a part of it. I get that, quite clearly. But it doesn't have to be. In my search, I was looking for the investor who has the appetite to really kind of just run this up and really kind of get it to $100 million in, ARR, really kind of build a company that's, across industries, across geographies, really build something that you could truly make it, the one and done, scenario for myself. And I think this board supports that, but it forced me to really work on the business. And that actually really led to a different leadership team, led to a different, planning, cadence and all of that. And I think that's been the biggest difference. I would not be able to plow through so much because at the very least, you had this doubt. Okay, advice is cheap. Anybody can tell me, what needs to be done, but there's no skin in the game. So I got to actually still go back and weigh, is this the right time to do it? Maybe the right thing to do it. Is this the right play to make? Am I right sizing these efforts? With somebody being on the same side of the table, really somebody who's seen plenty of investment. Our investor is 5 Elms. 5 Elms is a growth fund out of Kansas City. And they've recently just raised a $300 million fund. That is their fund 4. So they've invested in SaaS businesses for a while. Very successful set of people. So the advice has ready credibility that comes with it. And, there's some, interesting discussions that we have. And, I feel like that's the biggest difference that I actually, I was truly missing it as well. So in hindsight, this was a great move for Passageways and for myself as well.
So in that move to work more on the business and less in the business, and you mentioned kind of changing the way you think about your leadership team and what that's looked like. Maybe we can go from you then to that next level down and talk a little bit about how that's changed over the last couple of years and what some of your biggest takeaways are there.
Yeah, that's how it actually kind of just it plays out. You go from, okay, I want actually more strategic team. I definitely want people who are well supported by their teams. I'm going to actually not underfund anything. And you also need to actually keep scores a little better. So the first thing we did was we said, look, we've had a good run. There's growth every year. There's profit every year. This is a business model that sustains. We've sustained it. The question is, could we actually accelerate in a form that actually continues to, stay sustainable in the long run? Yeah. So obviously the capital is investment that we are burning at this point for the first time. So there was a need to really have a lot more rigorous accounting of things, whether it's the cost of customer acquisition or the gross margins or the within the two products, the cost allocation. So the first thing we did was we looked for hiring a CFO. And that was the biggest hire we made as well. This is the only other C-level I have in my team. The CFO is Colin. Colin's worked in several Indianapolis firms, and he's been a great addition to the team. We also hired a controller to make sure that, when you're working across geographies, there's sales tax and VATs and, all that stuff that needs to be in proper place for you to be able to scale without having to get, stuck every time you, take the next leap. Outside of the accounting function, we also wanted to bring a lot more rigor to our product management. So we hired Doug Wilson. Doug's actually from the ExactTarget ecosystem. He, leads our product management team. So other product managers, Nathan and Anne, who've been there. Anne's been there for more than 10 years. Nathan is about 10 years at this point. These are the old timers who really understand, how everything is balanced. While they're good at, what they do, we needed somebody to really kind of just look at this more strategically. And that's where Doug really has helped. We've also hired a head of engineering. For the longest time, we had a lot of people who'd shown leadership. These are leaders that we've grown over the period of time, but they didn't really have anybody, they didn't have the space in their calendars even to really kind of just, be objective about the engineering roadmap. The product roadmap we all obsess about, but the engineering roadmap always gets, that's the one that actually gets dissed. In fact, we hired Mick Cobb, and Mick's actually Angie's List, and several other companies here in the ecosystem as well. He's come in and he's really kind of just talked about this is not just the tech debt that we are paying for this reason. He's also trying to right size our technology. To get to 100 million, will we be a 20,000 customer base with 5,000 ACV? Are we going to be a 10,000 customer base with 10,000 ACV? That's a very key decision. If we don't know the answer to that, there's no chance you can build the right technology set, because there's a big difference in the way you'll architect the entire thing. So I think we become strategic in product, in engineering, in finance. Those are the key differences. I've had a settled, leadership in marketing and sales for a while. I'm blessed with that. And that's actually wonderful. They've actually, kept up with everything. We've also actually, added a layer in our, tech support and compliance and security area of the business, because we are in the secure collaboration space. Security is key. Getting to your SOC certification, ISO certification, these become a full-time job. So those are some of the things that we've added. Personally, for me, I went from actually running an operational meeting on Monday and another operational meeting, on Wednesday, to then saying, okay, strategic view is going to be once a quarter, to now actually finding that even the one-on-ones with these leaders who've been there and they've seen much bigger organizations, to really kind of just be discussing much more of what are the key gaps, what are the key, things that we are seeing that could be growth drivers, and then not having to worry about operationalizing it. And I didn't realize how much of a holdback that was.
Hold back meaning,
Yeah, so I'm not breaking any news. I am human.
yeah.
When you come up with the news, oh, that's great. Actually, let's do that. But then you also have to design the team and the tactics and the playbook. You're not as enthusiastic about some of these areas. So this, new change has allowed me to really think about what are the right things to do. And then, honestly, I didn't think I'm going to like it actually because I'm too much of an operator. But I'm enjoying the fact that I could actually say, okay, let's agree on what is the right thing. Then let's meet again. And maybe you come up with what's the best way to tackle it. That's a huge difference in my book. It really has allowed me to, really kind of see us flourish in ways that, I didn't even realize I was the holdup in a lot of these things. And, being able to trust people with something that, some of these people are new and some of them have been there for a very long time. It's just wonderful to see a whole lot of, people who are showing leadership in areas that I honestly felt I set out to build a leadership team where each one of them had to be better at that function than I could ever be. And I think, that was the only, way I set out to build this team. And I feel that was the best decision I made. We've also sunk in a lot in terms of human resource. We've hired an HR, leader. Nancy comes from the high alpha ecosystem. It really has changed the way we've started to look at our team. And, we had to redo our benefits and compensation, some of the discussions that are tough for a co-founder, CEO to really kind of just, you built this thing, somebody's going to now come and break it apart for you and say, this is the objective way to do this. But I had to go through those discussions and really kind of trust that this is the right way to scale this. And I think those were the changes that happened at the leadership level.
Right. Let's go one more level down from there then. You'd mentioned you guys have doubled the workforce, the employee base in the last 12 months. Talk a little bit about that experience and what that's done. Not just to, your ability to now execute more, but I mean, that affects everything, right? Culture, the leadership team that you need, it's everything.
Absolutely. So, everybody says that 100 employees shit starts to break. I think actually really we've seen that. And I was better prepared for some of the things that I just mentioned. But at the same time, it is a different level in the sense that at the very least, just think about going from 52 employees last February to this February in the all hands meeting, we had exactly double the number of employees. And the number of interviews.
That's a new employee every week.
That was a new employee every week. We had to do things that I, just never thought I'd do. I have a monthly breakfast with new employees. I didn't think that was a thing, actually. I used to read about it and I'm like, that's pretty funny. Would you not know them when you hire them? And then you get to the reality of it and you say, no, you can't interview everybody. You'll interview a lot of them. Every new employee coming, whether it's an SDR or a success manager or a account exec, you're just not going to spend as much time, but you get to meet them. So I think there was just the sheer interview work and making sure that there's a lot of thought given to what is our culture and what do we want to actually really kind of just put out as our aspirational culture, and really kind of just working through that to make sure that that you don't end up bringing in a whole lot of people that don't fit very well. We took 15 years to pull in the first 50. Then we didn't have 15 months to pull in the next 50. And it completely changes the dynamic at work. A lot of people need to be assured that this is going to be a net add to the team.
Positive change.
Yeah, positive change for everybody. A lot of people actually look forward to it. How do you balance all of that? And then, the fact that there are so many new ideas that you brought in, but you weren't prepared to handle all of these.
Right.
Now I have on Mondays a meeting that we call the Big Swings meeting, where anybody can submit an idea, build a business case for it. Doesn't matter where you belong in the organization. And you pull in the group that you think will actually do the best justice to it. That's become my Monday morning meeting. It's not the operational meeting. I moved that to Wednesdays. Quite simply because I feel like I'm the sharpest and the team's freshest on Monday morning, and we should look at the big things. So we've broken this up into, the explore category happens on Monday. The exploit category sort of, gets dealt with on Wednesdays, where, most of the stuff is already taken care of by then. But if it's not, we need to deal with it. But that shouldn't be what you start your week with. So those are some of the big changes that we've seen, just the sheer amount of ideas we've got on pricing, on packaging, on marketing and sales. There's a lot that you actually want to listen to because this is why you brought these guys in. So I think that's a good summary of where we are at this point.
Where do you find that much talent?
That's a great question, actually. This is a two-part observation on my part. First, I would say cities like Lafayette are at a much different spot now than they were 10, 15 years ago. You find a lot of high-quality talent in the second-tier, third-tier cities today. Unlike what used to happen, several years ago. Most of our recruitment was done out of Purdue University, fresh out of school. That's our mainstay, for the longest time. That was our mainstay. At this point, we are finding a lot of people who have some Purdue connection, who really want to be, back in the community, or there's somebody who's actually come back to the university because their spouse is doing a PhD and they want to work at a startup. Just because they're in Lafayette doesn't mean that they don't work in a high growth organization. So we're finding plenty of talent in Lafayette. While we do that, we also have great plans to be a global organization. My own journey is actually one of the main reasons for it. I'm rather unique in the fact that I grew up in India, and then now I've spent 15, 17 years of my life in US. But I also have a very distributed family.
Did you come to the US for college?
I came to Purdue for my MBA, yes.
Yeah.
So right after Purdue, I started this. So in a lot of ways, I have a family that actually is kind of very interesting. I've not done much with it yet, but my sister and her family is based out of Melbourne, Australia. And my brother and his family is based out of Singapore. And my mom is based out of New Delhi. And I'm here in US. So on a regular basis, almost on a daily basis, at any point in time, somebody's waking up, somebody's about to sleep in my family. When you think in those terms, in visas and currencies and fluctuations and economies, you really do start to wonder, if your product applies everywhere, why would you not go there?
Right.
We've also had lots of interesting data points to look at. Last year, we did about 40,000 board meetings on our platform. And I'm not talking about small little organizations. I'm talking about some of the most prestigious organizations, the largest bank in Africa, the Supreme Court in Kenya, huge organizations. These are, the largest IPO out of New York in the last 10 years. Still to this date, I won't name the customer because some of these customers are sensitive to, being named. Hundreds of public companies. Banks are serious about their governance because it's a compliance-driven play. Hospitals are serious about their compliance because really these are organizations where life and death is the decision you're about to make. So when you work with a clientele like that and you have a chance to really kind of spread out the organization, you really start to worry about the talent gap that you may have locally. When you start to think at 10x levels, you realize, okay, this is great, but it's good for 30, 40% growth. It's not going to suffice for 10x thinking. That's when we actually kind of just, we just put up an office in Indianapolis, about a 30, 40 people office in the Regents Tower right downtown. And we already have about 15, 17, maybe even 20 people in that office at this point.
Filling up.
And then, we have an office in UK. In January for my sales kickoff, I went from the Lafayette corporate office to UK right away after that for the sales kickoff. And then we had a sales kickoff in Florida because there's a group of people there. The entire month was just sales kickoff and plan kickoff. And that's a very different mindset. But you also realize that there's so much difference in the way people think. So I think diversity and, just bringing in that talent level from different places, really kind of just them knowing the local work environment is actually a big part of why we are going in these communities. I feel like Indianapolis is a great place to really kind of just pull in a lot of key talent. I'm sure you're nodding. So, you guys are beneficiaries of the same
obviously.
thing.
Yep.
Same thing can be said about a lot of other geographies that we are eyeing. I can tell you there was expansion going on in Lafayette office in Q1. We doubled our space there. We took the Indianapolis office and we took a UK office. You can imagine the number of leads and the follow-up work that happens. All of that is very different than where we used to be in the past. We built all of that out with a strategic goal to really kind of just be impacting every community we are in. That's a big part of the cultural playbook that has worked well for us in Lafayette. So we want to actually replicate that wherever we go. So it becomes a very engaged decision. At the same time, if we get this right, I think the benefits could be we could have a business plan that truly, starts to become synergistic in the way we operate.
This episode is brought to you by Full Stack PEO. Most founders start companies because they figured out a better way to solve a problem or serve a need, not because they love tracking payroll, filling out compliance forms, and explaining employee benefits packages. And yet, all that stuff still has to be done. That's why there's Full Stack PEO. Full Stack PEO specializes in turnkey HR for emerging companies, not just those core services, but advice and expertise that help founders maximize employee potential. Curious? Find out more at fullstackpeo.com.
When you reflect back on the last 15 years, what are the 1 to 3 things that surprise you the most in terms of what you've learned on that journey?
The first one that comes to mind, and I'd be remiss if I don't mention this, that, we hear on television a lot of talk about, how US is losing the edge. My experience is actually entirely different, so I should talk about it. I found people trust you here way more than people would trust you anywhere else. And, I just have always seen that in professors that I worked with and Purdue Fed and, Bob and Gail, people who supported us in the community, to me wanting help from, whether it's Michael Cloran or you, or whenever I've actually reached out to Scott Dorsey in Indianapolis without any actually real reason to be helping us openly. They're my advisors who've actually helped me over the years without any financial benefit out of it often. And I think that's the number one big call that was actually made correctly. I could have gone anywhere else in the world for my education. So I think if I reflect back on what I got right, one of the key things was that I actually came to the right country. The Midwest culture is a big part of it. We've deliberately not raised money from the coast or not moved there. You'll notice that that's actually kind of strange for some of the plans we had.
Right.
But I think, what's already working, don't fix it. That's really where
you don't normally hear Sydney, London, Indianapolis. That's not normally the set that you hear.
And I think this is a new world where I think all of these second tier markets may have a bigger advantage to them than you realize. I have lots of customers in California and New York. Sitting down with any one of them, it's always like, I don't know where the next person is going to come from or where the next hit is coming from. I think that's not where we live here. And I think that's worked really well. The second part of what we've done quite well is basically sort of, investing in the customers, knowing customers quite well. I sent out an email to 10 CEOs in my, customer base day before yesterday. And I was counting that I got 9 responses in the first day. This was, 5-part question. It doesn't happen easily. You need to really know them. Paul Marsh actually called me yesterday from his vacation. And I asked him, why are you calling me from vacation? This is not this important. He said, it's just my 25th anniversary. Just don't worry about it. And he was giving me some key input. And I think that's the thing that, has gone well. That, instead of actually getting excited about the investors wanting to invest and big valuations and all of that, we've been more excited about, hey, we didn't have to raise money this year.
How do you build that kind of relationship with a customer? So, because it is not something that, particularly when you think of a SaaS product offering, right?
Yeah.
It's almost the opposite of SaaS, right? When you think of
much more transaction.
Yeah. When you think of that kind of relationship, that's going to be a sales-driven organization that you're trying to provide enough value to get the client to buy up again on a regular basis. In a SaaS transaction, it's, we need to convince you that you need this product. Then hopefully you swipe the credit card, walk away, and we never talk again, right? So how did you do that? How do you do that?
I think this is a great question. I think for me, there are various ways to do this. You can actually work very hard to reduce your cost of customer acquisition, or you could work extremely hard to increase the lifetime value. These are the 2 key levers we are talking about. If you invest in the customer correctly, and when you put up on a slide, lifetime value is 17 years and, 16 years, and people are like, well, wait a minute, that can't be, the right lifetime value. And then you turn around and say, look, I still have customers who signed up in year 1. So it's 16 years. We have proof points to it.
Right.
I don't know if I'm giving the exact same care to every customer increasingly, because like I said, every day we are signing up new customers. They're not getting a call from me. But it comes down to recruiting the right people and, asking people the right questions. And really that's a big part of the culture that I talked about. If you bring in people who are too numbers driven, metrics driven, and they're constant, and in the examples they cite from their prior experience, you hear more processes and numbers than people they worked with. I watch for that, because I think, people who build great relationships, they build great relationships in their personal lives. They build great relationships at work. They build great relationships in their, friend circle and the kids' friend circle. That's how you are wired for it.
Right.
If you're very transactional and you really kind of just, think about, where's the next hit, of dopamine that's going to get, towards me, I think, that's a mindset that actually leads to great results in this year, maybe even in next year. But eventually somebody somewhere is going to have to invest in those relationships. Otherwise, those relationships are not going to have the same response. And I think money is a big driver in that. High valuations. We've become a culture of celebrating how much money you raised. I can guarantee you not enough people even know about Passageways because they've not had to raise money. And I think that's a big part of what I see as it's never bothered me. It's never really bothered me. It just starts with a team that says, look, if you're adding value and you don't need external money, you may have sacrificed some growth somewhere, or you may have learned the tricks of how to build sustainable relationships and you can deploy it at scale when you raise money. I think it's just a question of how you think about it. In my world, I feel there are two important things that, I'm trying to do. I'm trying to enjoy the world and I'm trying to change the world. Those are the two things that I live for. When it comes to building an awesome team that actually has amazing relationships, that's how you enjoy the world. It's no fun if you don't know your customers. It's no fun if they can't pick up the phone and say, I'm disappointed in you today, but I know you'll come through tomorrow for me. It's no fun if they can't call you and say, by the way, you'll love this. And I think that's the true benefit that you get out of it. And our investors saw this too. Anybody who's worked with us will actually notice that. I've worked with Developer Town, over several years. And you've made requests at times, and you said, I won't hold this against you. And I said, no, I will actually do this for you. It's a relationship mindset. The second part of changing the world, actually, I don't think that happens very easily unless you are this, genius like Elon Musk who could actually go up against the world and change the world.
Right.
That's one way to do it. My only shot at changing the world is to really build these relationships where people get down to telling you exactly where it is, where we are missing it. So I'd much rather actually kind of have 1,500 organizations really kind of feeling like this is the best vendor we have. And the communities we are in feeling like this is the best employer we have. And to do that, you'll have to spend a lot of time in taking a lot of conversations that actually may be a little more open-ended. And you find yourself doing things where sometimes the brain says no, but the heart says yes, and you'll have to go with your heart. I think that's what it comes down to in my world.
How do you, that specific last thing you said, where your brain says no and your heart says yes, and earlier we were talking about some of the amazing constraints on your time right now as you scale, as you hire a tremendous amount of people, try to take the product globally, try to figure out strategy for the product long term. You're balancing so much stuff. How do you, tactically, how do you figure out how to make space for those things that you want to say yes to?
I struggle with that. And, this is the honest answer I can tell you. When I got funding, I said, I'm going to buy a new set of custom golf clubs. And it's been 8 months now. The season is here. I ordered the clubs. I've not actually gone to pick them up. It's unbelievable actually to me because it was obviously very important to me.
Right.
And then not having, and this has been, I've been getting these messages because I actually think that in the final, on balance, I would feel like, I had to do that a lot more than I actually made space for. Golf is important. I have a 2-year-old at home. So golf's not important anymore. And because he started to actually talk back. And then at the same time, there are these new leaders who've come from success and they've trusted you with the next, 4, 5, hopefully 10 years. How do you make sure that you actually don't, how do you balance this on a daily, weekly basis? You struggle with it. One of the things that I've started to do, hopefully, better than in the past, is that I sign up for the day thinking about what my next day is going to be. I plan my next day much more deliberately. So if there are things I need to move around, I will do that in the evening and say, hey, look, this sounded important. I think there's somebody else who has more passion for it. And this I have been ignoring. I need to pick this up. And then, on a weekly basis, the entire leadership team actually has to reflect on how the week was. They write a note to their teams and they, copy the leadership on it. And I write a note to everybody in the team. It takes a while to write a note because you frankly have to go through a sales review, marketing weekend review, same thing for product, engineering, tech support. It's a lot. And then you have to process and you have to say, this is what the key priority is for me. I've been doing this for years. Several CEOs do it. I've admired anybody who's done this for a while because I know how much effort goes into it. But you'll find that in every new hire, there's a moment where that happens when they come back and they tell me about something that they were not even supposed to know, but they know it from those notes. So that constant reprioritizing on a weekly basis. And then now I've added this step of really looking through my schedule for the next day or two to really make sure if I need to actually rejig it at the last moment so that I can actually do the right things. I think that's become important for, important way to really kind of just, keep my balance.
When you do that, so let's say you have a couple of things that as you reflect on the next day or the day after, and you say, okay, this isn't strategic. Maybe I can kill this or put it off or hand it off to somebody else. What happens to that white space that just got created? Do you hold it? Do you block it and keep that available for you to catch up on things, think strategically, go play golf? Or does it immediately just get replaced by something else? Are you cleaning your calendar and make space for new requests that have come in? And so at the end of the day, you're still booked, from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. It just looks different than it looked the night before.
I think honestly, I do okay in just handling the requests that are coming in. It's just the not having that free time basically compromises the serendipitous discussion that may happen when you sit down with somebody. That's what I worry about because frankly, if you sit down with a salesperson who just, lost a deal and spend half an hour, you learn something new every single time. If your calendar is packed, which sometimes it does get packed, you don't have the time to read up on what else is going on. You don't have the time to learn from other organizations that have successfully scaled. Those are the pieces that I feel struggle. I've become better at keeping my personal first, and the teams actually have hopefully earned their trust where they realize, okay, look, we've got to actually really make sure that he doesn't, I still check emails when I'm on vacation. Like I never miss a morning stand-up meeting, even if I'm in Spain, even if it's an ungodly hour. I would always check in even on vacations because I like doing it. I feel like the rest of the day is very easy for me then because I know exactly where things are. But, there is these pieces that I'm not able to do. And I think I got to trust my leadership to be able to do more of that. And, so talking to the salespeople or talking to the water cooler talk that doesn't actually happen often enough. That's, what my worry is. And, everybody is listening to stuff. Everybody's going to these events. So they're bringing up what may be important for us. And I worry about, I think it's very straightforward. I'll tell you what the main discussion topic is in the boardroom as well as in the organization. The product market fit is there because we get a sale every day. Something tells me we have the right product. Right?
Yes.
If we're getting 50 sales in a month, it's repeatable.
Correct.
But the product channel fit is just not clear.
Talk a little bit more about that.
So the product channel, so currently we are doing a lot of direct sales, a lot of inbound, a lot of outbound, and we've succeeded with that. We know the unit economics and that work for us. We also have these partnership sales that are working. I have resellers in Africa that are actually producing. And, there's this power law of distribution that shows up in everything that we do that, eventually, if you look at any one company that is scaled like Dropbox, they don't actually really, they're primarily through virality is how they're expanded.
Right.
Most of the sales come from that. And when you look at somebody like Workday, they're not about virality. There's a very enterprise sales cadence.
Correct.
What we find ourselves doing is dabbling in a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And the mix is not like 80% sales coming from this channel. That's the dominant channel. And then you don't have some of the other channels, being unnecessarily being embellished, or, they're gaining too much importance and we're over-indexing on a channel that's just not for us in the long run. And I think it's very important simply because I have now come to realize that, the channels cannot flex to the product, but the products can flex to the channel. Once you know this is the channel, I can change my product to really kind of be perfect for that.
Got it.
This took me such a long time to realize. And, if that fit is established, I think that'll solve and unlock us in ways that I don't need to do the rest of the stuff. It's not going to lead to much.
Can you share an example of in the past where you've done that and you've seen good results, where you've changed the product to fit the channel?
Yeah. So, I mentioned about AGB. AGB is a great organization. They have tremendous insight into what the planning agenda should look like. They also help a lot of universities, including Purdue actually has worked with AGB extensively, to really kind of just think about what should the next generation of leaders think about. And all that work that they're doing, it's got nothing to do with the board portal offering that we sell through them. When you are flexing to the channel, then you will build tools in your product to really kind of just have all of that output be available through your product to your customer base. When you don't, you'll say, well, yeah, it's pretty easy. It's just, as long as you have it in a PDF or a video, you can always upload it. But what you miss out on that is you'll never create a centralized way for AGB and Passageways to distribute this frictionless, which is where it lives. So if your product is not ready for that channel, you will keep selling one at a time. The moment you marry it together, I think about this as HBO and the Game of Thrones analogy, where if you have one Game of Thrones, so many people have HBO just for that.
Yeah.
I think in our world, we need to figure out if it's just going to be direct sale, then let me find the best collateral and the best cadence and the best sales managers to really kind of plow through that channel. If it's going to be partner driven, then I need to actually find the ways for the product to flex. So I don't need to build a self-serve and all of that, because really it's going to be partner enabled. If it's going to be resellers and value-added resellers across the world, I need to do multilingual and co-branding and all of those different pieces that make those partners be successful. So I think each one of these plays is very different in the way it plays out on the product side. But once you know what the right channel is, I think it becomes very easy for you as an entire organization to really kind of accelerate in the right direction. I hope that helps.
That's a fantastic example. Might wrap up on this. What's the biggest thing you're learning right now personally that you think is going to better position you to run Passageways in the next 6 months to 6 years?
I think my learning has just been that, what an organization achieves is so much a function of how the leadership team thinks about themselves. Almost anything is possible. Without exaggeration, I never owned a computer in my life before coming to Purdue. The first laptop I bought was at Purdue. And there was this, bullheadedness about, being able to do anything. And it was, rather foolish, but turns out it's actually not far from the truth.
Yeah.
And I apply that to my current context and say, look, I'm going to be like clockwork, a $25 million company, in end of next year or the year after, whatever. That's a great number. A lot of companies would actually say that's a great place to be. Or I could actually be $100 million company after, the same time frame. It's the real vector that drives that is just your ability to aspire for it. And it's so hard to, really kind of just, come to terms with that the ultimate blockage in the company is right between my ears. And I think that realization has to transcend just myself, but, you need the leadership team also to really have that belief. And then we start to call each other out on the things that we may be actually unnecessarily holding up. I think that's the biggest thing that we've not been able to do. This is a newer team. Like I said, new CFO, new head of engineering, new head of product, new HR leader. We are just, the team's just forming. but I am trying to make them resilient to the point where we can have these tough discussions and, see if we can make some music together, something that we can all be proud of. I say this simply because it really applies in my case, because I think I've stumbled upon a space which you could actually continue to process for your entire career. A lot of the, business plans that I see, they're a great 3-year, 5-year, 7-year gigs. But when you talk about enterprise collaboration, it's going to stay. 20 years from now, there'll be somebody actually trying to move the ball. And I think we are in that space. And at this point, I'm a triple PhD in enterprise collaboration just from, staying for such a long time. And I feel like I have the chance to change the world. I just need to make sure I, have the right room and really everybody's convinced, and we could probably make anything happen.
Awesome. Do you use OnBoard for your own board meetings?
Yes, we do, actually. It's been, one of the big reasons why I think we operate better as a board as well, because everybody's got, all this information at their fingertips. And, I think it's a quick way for us to experience what we are doing as well. There's several people on the board who are on other boards that are using OnBoard as well. So we get some other input points as well.
Yeah, that's great. Excellent. Man, I really appreciate you taking the time. I've already kept you longer than I'm supposed to. Thank you so much for coming down here and out of your very busy schedule and talking with me.
No problem. Not at all. You guys are doing some amazing work here. We are a big beneficiary of Developer Town being here and all the other companies that you and Michael have dreamt up. It's quite amazing to watch this. And it's just a pleasure to really kind of just be a little part of what you're trying to do now. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
If you're thinking of launching a SaaS product, Startup Competitors can provide data on your closest competitors, survey potential users, or provide other product validation services. Learn more at startupcompetitors.com.